Ooh, welcome back. Uh, Sorry, I'm a nerd. But following the previous video that we had on the project support services and what the open source office is, I wanted to get ahead of the press, I guess you will, and do a quick explainer connecting to that on the project incubation itself. Now, do take with a grain of salt. The working group is working through the defined acceptance criteria for the phases, so you know where you fall in. But this is kind of a high level or quick level summary so people understand what we're talking about when we say incubation, etc. Let me get. Oh, I'm not even recording, am I? No, I am. Okay, I'm just dumb, like usual. I need to go to share screen. So what I'm looking for. Uh, Here we go. So yeah, I will zoom in so everyone can read this better. So the 5 phases that the open source committee put together and reviewed were incubation, growth, maturity, decline, and abandonment. Now, this is how Intersect is going to classify all of the projects within our management as well as any coming in. The first 3 phases have to do directly with the incubation process, and that's where our acceptance criteria is coming in. The other two are remediation efforts, I guess you could classify them as, because ideally, a project within the first 3 phases is considered healthy. If something comes out of line, that's when you hit the decline phase, which kind of puts us into a red alert where this project is declining. We need to remediate it and bring it back to green. And then if multiple attempts for like say a year, the project just hasn't made the adoption or everyone has walked away from it, it'll be considered abandonment. And that's where we determine if we are deprecating it entirely or just turning it into a public archive, something along those lines. But the characteristics within the incubation piece, as I was alluding to at the CNCF example in the previous video, was that it's mostly a new project or a proof of concept MVP. It has a limited code base and community, limited documentation testing, few contributors and users. The challenges associated with this is there's attracting initial contributors and users. The project needs to build a solid foundation and overcoming a chicken and the egg problem. And so, what we would want to do with that project is help establish a clear vision and roadmap, created a welcoming community, and focus on building a solid technical foundation. And that's where incubating is mostly about. We'll have explicit what Intersect is offering to those projects coming off of this here shortly, and then the entrance standards for incubation is very low altogether. We'll have a project submission board that any community person who wants to come in can evaluate as to which of these 3 stages they think they qualify as, and then we'll evaluate it and put them in the appropriate buckets depending on that acceptance criteria. And we'll be publishing that in the next week or two as soon as the working group concludes it. But assuming that you came in as a new project, you had successful interaction with us, and we helped build a community as well as adoption. There's documentation in place, and you're starting to incorporate the Intersect open source policies and best practice. You'll move into the growth phase, which is you start gaining traction. You have contributors and users. Your code base is expanding, becoming more feature rich. And then you have more testing and documentation that's more comprehensive, i.e., now you have a more fully fleshed contributing MDs. So people know how they can put it together. You actually have documentation explaining if it's, depending on the type of project, how you set up the instance, i.e., if it was Cardano node is now bigger, and you actually have documentation about how you set that up, and you can put it into a testing environment, etc. The more challenges from our side here of what the objectives are to address is you have to manage the growth and scaling of that project and then balance the competing priorities and interests and ensuring the quality is stable amongst the rapid growth. And so what we would try to do to make sure that that's handled is establish a clear governance model and decision-making process, foster that culture of collaboration and open communication, and prioritize quality stability over feature creep. And this ties in with adopting those policies that we have, putting them in place, and making sure that that comes full circle. I recommend reading our governance policy on the Gitbook page for that. And then the last phase that I'm hoping a lot of our projects reach is the project maturity phase, which is there's not much more Intersect can fully offer. This is where projects have gone through all the basics, and now it's literally advanced adoption and compiling that way. The typically the characteristics you'd see is the project's achieved stability and reliability. There's a large and active community with diverse contributions, wide adoption and recognition within the industry. Cardano node is a great example of that. There's all kinds of I mean, it's the mainstay of Cardano blockchain, so it has that mature focus. There's a big community. Basically, Cardano is built around it indirectly. Challenges with this is maintaining that momentum and motivation, managing conflicts, disagreements within the community, ensuring long-term sustainability and viability. And that's where our other policies come in place. What this incubation and framework is trying designed to do is take these highly mature projects that are mostly core Cardano and ensure that they have sustainable futures. And this is where you'll get a lot of the direct investment from Intersect to ensure those projects are alive and well, get commercial adoption, build their open source communities, and work from there. The best practice is making sure that that clear roadmap exists. There's continuous improvement and innovation, community feedback mechanisms, and then develop a plan for succession and knowledge transfer, i.e. if maintainers need to change, diversifying the maintainer base, etc. And so this is where we want everyone to be. Now, the caveat to this is Intersect invests more in projects as they go through these phases as a risk mitigation. Because in incubation, I wouldn't think you'd get as much financial contribution because it's still a proof of concept mostly, but it's still available depending on how the stakeholders view the investment needed for the project, and each use case is different. But then you'd move into growth, which is where you open more investment opportunities because now the project has the proof of concept established. The community is wanting it. And then once it reaches that maturity phase, you are a fully fledged project that Intersect is relying on and marketing heavily. The other two that I briefly categorized here was the decline and abandonment, i.e. this is red flags. We'll monitor our projects via Bitergia, and we can see the decline in contribution or other factors that come up. And this is mainly, it could even be internal conflicts, i.e. the maintainers just decide to quit. So we will address those and I'm thinking we'll have like a 1-year runway to make sure remediation efforts always happen. If nothing ever gets addressed, then we would go into the abandonment section. But typically characteristics here, project experience decline in contributors and users. It's becoming outdated and unmaintained. And then there's clear misdirection and leadership going on. The challenge is revitalizing the project, overcoming the stigma of a dead project, and then ensuring a smooth transition or retirement. And best practice is just do a thorough assessment, engage with the community, to understand the reasons why, and then develop a plan or retire the project depending on where we need to go. And that's where abandonment categories, the project's officially retired or abandoned. There's no further development. It's legacy code or a reference repo. And we just need to, from our side, and making sure that there's a smooth transition, preserving the project's legacy and avoiding any negative impact in case there's that one person of a million who finds it useful, but there's not enough demand to keep it sustained. And that's where we'll document it, provide resources, and celebrate the project's achievements as we retire it. But that, in a nutshell, is what we're trying to establish right now in a proper policy, which will be on our Gitbook soon, based off this document. And it's going to highlight the project incubation process, the criteria that's met, so how you know when you're in one of those first 3 phases. Obviously, if we'll set a baseline for each project, so that way if you notice things falling from its initiation, that's where we enter that remediation phase, and then we can determine if we deprecate or abandon the project after a year or so. But to build off of this, my whole objective for this is to ensure that the community finally has a plugin for Intersect, and there's a return on investment to our members. And that way, it's not just Intersect is focused on core Cardano, which is our mainstay, but that we're also bringing in what the community and membership base is telling us as other pillars that Intersect needs to be aware of and or help support. But if you have any comments, questions, or want to be involved, the tech working group is still going on. Open source committee is every other Friday from now on. And then there's the open source office hours. I'm that open source guy on Discord. Just reach out. I'm willing to plug in and always connect with everyone. Thank y'all.